A while back I did a video about Pokemon Shield and I made clear how disappointed I was with it, even compared to Pokemon Blue and Crystal. Remember that the last time I played Pokemon before Shield was Pokemon Crystal in 2003. So when I played and beat Shield, I was rather sad to see that Game Freak seemingly takes its fans for granted and develops a below average game. However, one thing I didn't mention at the time was when I bought a used copy of Pokemon Shield, I also bought a used copy of Pokemon Legends Arceus. I did it mainly because people were saying that it was quite different than Shield or the usual Pokemon formula, that it was more of a traditional JRPG, and so I went along with it. Obviously though, the first one I've played was, well, Shield. And while I could use this video to compare Shield and Arceus, the only thing I will say is Pokemon Legends Arceus absolutely destroys Pokemon Shield in almost every single aspect. But now let's talk about Arceus. What actually surprised me was the fact that this was far more of a traditional JRPG than I initially expected. Even though I never played the modern Zelda games, from what I've seen, Arceus seems to play and feel more like those Zelda games, with a coat of traditional Pokemon formula around it, let's say. Something the mainline Pokemon games apparently aren't. You start the game with your nameless hero that essentially travels back in time a couple of 100 years before the events of even Pokemon Blue, Red and Green. Yeah, I'm not joking, because chronologically speaking, Pokemon Legends Arceus is a prequel to every other Pokemon game out there. In this world, people know about Pokemon, but they have little information about them. In fact, some people even fear them. Also, some have never even seen a Pokemon, and the usual Pokemon battles that are the norm in other games are barely a thing here. Sure, sometimes you will fight a Pokemon trainer, but since trainers are a rarity in this world, you won't fight them as much. Usually, you will fight wild Pokemon. But I am jumping ahead a bit, so let's go back. You traveled back in time by the hands of Arceus himself. Why? Because apparently there is a threat to the Hisui region, and only you can save it. You wake up and the first thing you see are the 3 starter Pokemon in this world, and as you can see, these Pokemon are starters in different Pokemon generations. Cyndaquil is from Generation 2, Oshawott is from Generation 5, and Rowlet is from Generation 7. So yeah, in the world of Pokemon Arceus, you will see Pokemon from different generations, but overall, the number of total Pokemon is not even 250. But seeing how Pokemon are a new concept in this world, I think Game Freak made the right decision to not have too many Pokemon in the game, because it would be too much overkill if they had 300, 400 or 500 Pokemon here. So 220-ish Pokemon overall, it's actually a decent number and a decent size. After Professor Laventon finds you, his 3 Pokemon wander off and you have to catch them. Now, the interesting thing here is that Laventon doesn't run after those 3 himself, because he isn't good at catching Pokemon. You may say that's not hard at all, but remember, the people in this world barely have any knowledge of Pokemon. That obviously includes catching, fighting and whatever. So it actually makes sense why Laventon is bad at catching Pokemon. He himself hasn't had that big of a chance to research many Pokemon either. Actually, the creatures are usually the ones approaching the humans, not the other way around. And as the professor says here, Pokeballs are a recent invention as well, which is also why they look quite different from the usual ones we all know. So obviously these people lack experience and knowledge. This is actually a very interesting concept, and I was immediately immersed in this world because of it. This first mission actually does a good job introducing you to the new mechanics. You don't necessarily need to fight Pokemon to catch them. You can hide in the grass or behind a tree, wait until the Pokemon turns its back on you, and then you throw your Pokeball at them, which increases the chances of a successful capture. Something like this is what I was hoping to see in modern Pokemon games, and Arceus finally did it. Mechanics that give you the choice either to engage in a battle or be stealthy. After a while you catch these 3 rascals and the professor invites you to the village he lives in, Jubilife Village. This will be your main base, and in fact, this is the only village in the whole game. Sure, later on you will find a few tribes, but that's about it. And yes, this also makes sense because on how underdeveloped this region actually is. So, after Laventon introduces you to the village and you run around to see what this nice and rather tranquil place has to offer, you will become a member of the Galaxy Expedition team. Since you are the hero of this story and have the skill to catch Pokemon like it's nothing, your goal will simply be to complete the Pokédex of this region, Hisui region, which is actually convenient because that was your goal from the very start actually, because Arceus told you to do that anyway. But since I don't want to run the risk of spoiling too much here, I will keep it at that for now. You basically live in this village from now on. Your job is to catch Pokemon for the sake of research and to bring humans and Pokemon closer together, while you are also following the goal given to you by Arceus himself. Well, technically, since you lost your memory when you fell down the space-time rift, which is that thing right there, so the goal to catch them all is initially only the goal of Laventon and the Galaxy team. You just happen to help them out because they have accepted you in their village. Like I've stated, this is actually quite an interesting concept, and I was actually invested in the game from the very start. Unlike Pokemon Shield, that made me facepalm quite a lot of times and rather bored me to death after a while. Once you have full control over your character again, you will need to complete missions for the Galaxy team to move the story forward. Other characters will play a big role in the story as well, like Irida and Adaman, which are a reference to the later Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, chronologically speaking. In fact, Palkia from Pearl and Yalga from Diamond are in this game as well. And yes, you can catch both of them, as you can see here. I have both, even evolved. Alongside your main missions, you also will have over 100 side missions available to complete. Being it to catch certain Pokemon, finding certain items, saving someone, or whatever. The number of side missions increase once you've unlocked new areas in the world map and have done certain prior side missions as well. Or beat the main ending of the game, because post-game will present you with more side missions. Interestingly enough though, these side missions aren't there just for the sake of it. Well, okay, granted, some are just filler. but many others actually tell a story about the character that gave you that side mission, giving side characters overall some depth and relevancy in this world. That is quite a nice touch, and I like when characters like these have something to tell instead of just be there for the sake of being there and be an empty character overall. Not only that, some missions also expand the village. Like here, as you can see, this woman doesn't have a Pokemon by her side, but by doing a certain mission for her, you will give her a Geodude to help her out, and from then on, you will see her with her new Pokemon. Or in these fields, a similar thing will happen if you give these farmers a Geodude or a Psyduck. But it goes even beyond that at times, because the woman I gave a Geodude to, if you have done enough missions for her, at some point her Geodude will even evolve to a Graveler. That was actually quite awesome to see. Basically, as you move on in the story and have done enough side missions, the village will not only be far more Pokemon friendly, but it will also get bigger as well. Bigger in the sense of evolving, by having more buildings and shops in it, which makes this world actually feel alive and makes your progress in the game feel very important. It actually reminded me of Digimon World. But seriously, this is what I was hoping modern Pokemon would be. The battles work a bit different than probably many of you are used to. Sure, it still is 1 versus 1 for the most part, but here you don't necessarily have to fight. In fact, outside of bosses and major events, you don't need to fight at all. But okay, I would recommend you fight, because otherwise you barely will level up your Pokemon, obviously, even though you actually can level up without battling, because you can send your Pokemon out to get items by themselves or hit trees or something. Doing this will give your Pokemon EXP as well, but certainly not as much if you actually battle. Also, allowing your buddies to hit trees or something also will increase their friendship towards you, simply because you've trusted them with this simple task of gathering an item. But my ultimate point is, if you don't want to battle, you simply don't need to. In fact, even if you are in a battle and want to escape, you can by simply running away. And running away might come in handy sometimes, because once all your Pokemon lose a battle against a strong opponent, the same opponent will then attack you directly. So pay attention to that and run away as fast as you can if you don't have Pokemon ready. Because either you will have trouble against a strong Pokemon, or you might also run into the trouble of a few Pokemon ganging up on you. Yeah, if several Pokemon are in a group together and they belong to the aggressive type that will attack you no matter what, then the likelihood that the whole group attacks you together is actually high, especially in these areas they call massive outbreak areas. Not only that either, the opponents tend to use every chance they get to exploit every weakness of your Pokemon, and since many are hybrid types with 2 elements, then it can get quite challenging. So yeah, the AI is actually quite capable in here and will give you a challenge quite a few times. But most of the time though, you will find yourself hiding in the bushes or something to surprise wild Pokemon and get the advantage in battle either way. However, this method only works if they are showing you their back, and you throw one of your Pokemon at their back or head. Because if you throw your Pokeball at the floor, no matter if your target is looking at the opposite direction, it won't be surprised. So always make sure to hit them from behind. Now, one thing I wasn't expecting is the Hisui versions of some Pokemon. When I was able to choose my starter Pokemon, I chose Cyndaquil because that's also the one I chose in Pokemon Crystal 20 years ago. And yes, also because I think Typhlosion is a cool Pokemon. Not as cool as Arcanine though. So when I got my Cyndaquil, at some point it turned into Quilava, and then when it evolved again, it turned into something I didn't even know existed. I asked myself what the hell this Pokemon was. Maybe a dark version of Typhlosion? Maybe my friendship with Cyndaquil or Quilava wasn't high enough or something? But as it turns out, there is no Typhlosion in this game. There is only Hisui Typhlosion, which looks like a slightly depressed version of the normal version, I guess. Or later, when I was hoping to find and catch a Growlithe and was surprised to see this. I asked myself what the hell this was. It certainly was not the Growlithe I knew. But just like Arcanine, both are just the Hisui versions, and these versions have secondary elements to them. Like Typhlosion is a pure fire Pokemon, originally, I guess. However, Hisui Typhlosion is a fire and ghost hybrid. It's like Typhlosion and Gengar made a child or something, and Hisui Typhlosion came out of it. Similar with Arcanine, the Hisui version is a fire and rock hybrid, which is a weird combination, but okay. So some Pokemon are simply the Hisui versions of the originals. Well, okay, since Pokemon Legends Arceus is a prequel, maybe then the Hisui Typhlosion is the actual original. Who knows, maybe with time, Hisui Typhlosion evolved naturally, slowly into the normal Typhlosion, and at some point Hisui Typhlosion went extinct? Now, maybe something like this, region-specific Pokemon, also happen in other games I haven't played yet. So if you have way more experience playing Pokemon games than I do, for you something like this might be normal, but I was rather surprised seeing this because, well, I don't have much experience with Pokemon games. But whatever the case may be, catching Pokemon continues to be a lot of fun, but now even more so with these added elements of stealth and the fact that even if you don't have any more Pokemon available, the wild Pokemon will continue to attack you. But still, don't worry too much, because you will just pass out if the opponent attacks you directly multiple times. And, well, that's basically it, you just pass out. The wild Pokemon won't eat you or something. That actually could have been a dark aspect to the franchise, couldn't it? Imagine if the wild Pokemon attacks you directly, you die, and that Pokemon eats you. That would be cool, but, well, maybe too dark for a franchise like this? And since I've also mentioned evolutions, your Pokemon won't evolve without you giving the okay first. You will get a notification that an evolution is available. The Pokeball will shine, but an evolution won't happen without you saying so. And to be honest, I actually prefer this mechanic over your Pokemon evolving on their own. Also, every single attack your Pokemon learn, you can always swap them out from the main menu. Meaning, your Pokemon will never forget the moves they have already learned. This was actually a damn nice idea, because this actually adds more strategy to the battles when you have the option to choose which set of moves your Pokemon should use, which also adds to your own fighting style a lot more. Now, since this world barely knows about Pokemon, you don't have access to a Pokédex. Well, okay, let me explain. Technically, there is something like a Pokédex, but it doesn't work like the usual Pokédex we know, because all the information about the existing Pokemon haven't been gathered yet. You know, like in modern Pokemon games where you just need to fight a Pikachu, for example, and your Pokédex immediately provides you with all the available information about Pikachu. In Arceus, you still are in the very early stages, and this means that you need to actually do research. Meaning you see, for example, a hippopotamus or something, and fight it. But you still need to clear some of these research tasks to get the actual Pokédex-like entry for hippopotamus. Don't worry though, you don't need to clear all tasks. You just need to get 10 points total for the entry of hippopotamus to be cleared, and you might be able to fight a shiny hippopotamus later on as a result of your completing the research. If you complete the whole entry for him, meaning 100% of all tasks, even though you don't need to, then the chances of you finding the shiny version of hippopotamus will increase drastically. But honestly, while nice, this shiny Pokemon deal is literally just cosmetic and nothing more. So if you want to be an absolute GOAT in Pokemon Arceus and complete absolutely everything, then you will have a lot to do by completing the Pokédex, getting all shiny Pokemon, etc. But otherwise, I would not bother. In fact, I didn't bother to find those shiny Pokemon at all, even though I was lucky enough to see one once. Some of these research tasks are even unique to a specific Pokemon, but most of them are very similar, like catching that particular Pokemon multiple times, using a specific attack multiple times, using strong or agile style a certain amount of times, etc. Regarding agile and strong style, your companions will be able to master their abilities, and once they do that, they will be able to use them either as an agile style or strong style. Agile means that your attacks will be weaker, but you will increase your action speed, meaning you might be able to get another turn immediately before your opponent gets a turn to attack. Strong style just means that your attacks will be stronger, but your action speed will decrease. However, both styles use 2 PP points instead of just 1, so pay attention to that. But you know what, I won't dive into every single thing here, because otherwise I would be here all fucking day. So let's speed this up. The areas you will visit are quite big and are a lot of fun to explore. Maybe a bit too empty at times, just a tiny bit. If you look at your map, you will see grey areas here and there, but that increases the exploration aspect, because to unlock those areas in the map, you need to have been there first, which actually makes sense in this world, since Hisui region itself hasn't been explored enough by the residents yet. In the world map, you will sometimes find lost items from random people. If you find and return them, you will get merit points to have access to special items. Yeah, it's like a currency outside of the usual money you can get. That currency will allow you to buy, for example, stones to evolve certain Pokemon that wouldn't evolve otherwise. But one more thing about the Pokédex. The point of the research tasks is also to give you points. You will need these points to increase your level in the Galaxy team. Think of this as something like the Pokemon arenas and how you get a badge once you defeated their leader. You know, Misty, Brock and whatever. And with each badge, you will be able to level up your Pokemon to a certain level. Because if you don't get those badges, then you will lose control of your Pokemon if it surpasses a specific level. So these points you get in Arceus through the Pokédex and research tasks work in a similar way, since in this game there are no arenas nor badges. Instead, there are stars that you get as a result of your research. In all areas you will sometimes find alpha Pokemon. These are very strong Pokemon that are high level and usually bigger than their normal counterparts. They usually also have abilities that they shouldn't be able to learn normally. So if you find one of those, try to catch them, but again, they are strong, aggressive and quite hard to catch. Still a fun option to get strong Pokemon fast. Just make sure that your level is high enough for you to be able to control those alpha Pokemon. Outside of alphas, you will also have boss battles with Pokemon that are frenzied and shine gold. These frenzied Pokemon are story related though, the alphas mostly are not. Now the fun part about these frenzied Pokemon is you don't need to use your Pokemon to beat them. You actually can fight them one-on-one if you use a certain remedy against them. And honestly, it's way more fun to fight them head-on without using Pokemon to help out. If you do it this way, you will have to dodge attacks and throw the remedy at them anytime you can. After a few hits, the frenzied boss will be stunned, and usually this will be the point where you can use your Pokemon to fight the boss. But I rarely did that. I just threw stuff at them, ran around and dodged attacks. Again, it was way more fun and even challenging this way, especially with later frenzied Pokemon. I really enjoyed these battles. Overall, the game actually looks and sounds quite nice. Weather effects are nicely done and the ways you have to trespass the areas are quite interesting. And unlike Pokemon Shield, you actually have to earn these transportation options. You can trespass the areas by riding on Weird Gear, dig up items with Ursaluna, surf around and even battle on water with Basculegion, climb up mountains with Sneasgear, or glide down a high place with Braviary. Yeah, glide, you cannot actually fly here. However though, the game still has a few problems that bring it down a bit. The expressions of the characters and especially the Pokemon could have been a bit better, the overall textures could have been better as well, and a few minor things. Still though, it's far better than Pokemon Shield. But one thing annoyed me a bit after a while. For some reason, if you are in a specific area and you want to go to a different one, you always have to go back to the village first. It would have been far better if I could change areas without having to be forced to go back to the village first. But honestly, this point was the only one that annoyed me slightly, but otherwise I really don't have many complaints here. Now, I didn't want to go into this earlier, but now I will have to spoil the story a bit. Visually, I will not show you anything from the post-game ending, mainly because when I beat Arceus, I forgot to record footage. So you can enjoy some random clips instead, but still, I will talk about those spoilers for a while. Now, while I haven't played Brilliant Diamond or Shining Pearl yet, I couldn't stop myself and do some research, mainly because of the Diamond and Pearl clans that actually appear in this game. So, what's actually interesting is that the Hisui region in Pokemon Arceus actually is the later Sinnoh region from Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Not only that, but the hero might even be the same hero from those two games, just a bit older. You see, because they look quite similar, don't they? However, none of it was confirmed. This is just my theory and nothing else. Now, this sentence here actually makes clear that the hero is, or at least appears to be, 15 years old, and from what I understand, typically the hero in Pokemon games tends to be around 10 years old, maybe 11, maybe 12 at best. You know, like Satoshi in the anime. In Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, I assume it's no different. So if I am correct with my assumption here, then the hero in Pokemon Arceus could as well be the hero from Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, just a few years older, which also explains why he or she is so talented in catching, battling and befriending Pokemon, since before he traveled back in time to Hisui, the hero was probably already a Pokemon champion in his own timeline, but in Hisui he forgot about it. However, this will never become clear in the game actually, outside of maybe some hints here and there that still don't confirm anything 100%. The main ending in Arceus doesn't make any of this clear either, because you will just catch, or rather save, Palkia and Dialga and the credits will roll. If you manage to quite literally get all Pokemon and stuff and meet Arceus himself, you will see the post-game ending, but you won't really get any definitive answer of who you actually are. Heck, you won't even go back to your own timeline. Yeah, you will stay in Hisui, and that is, not a real conclusion. Or at least I don't think that's a satisfying conclusion. Because wouldn't the hero want to go back home? Wouldn't it make more sense to send him home after he saved Hisui? He saved it, he has no reason to stay there any longer. But in fact, the hero is not the only one Arceus captured and forced to travel to Hisui, I assume. Because remember this guy. This is Ingo, assumingly the same Ingo from Pokemon Black and White. Yeah, I had to look it up. And regarding him, it's actually unclear how he even went back in time at all. My assumption is that Arceus did it, but, well, who knows. Assuming this is the same character, but just a bit older, like the hero is a bit older as well, then this also points to the possibility that these two were not the only ones that Arceus threw back in time while making them lose their memories. Now, I'm not saying that the game should have made clear that the hero is the same one from Diamond and Pearl, or that Ingo is the same one from Black and White. Because my main point is this: after the post-game ending, these characters, the hero and Ingo, possibly more, who knows, should actually go back to their own present time, instead of staying in Hisui for no reason, to give this game a satisfying conclusion. Because as is, Pokemon Legends Arceus doesn't really have a conclusion, and seeing how good the game has been, this kind of ending kind of ruins it. But no, Arceus didn't just simply throw you back in time for the sake of it. Because there is actually a threat in the game, something like a villain that wants to frenzy Palkia and Yarga, and Arceus needs help to stop that villain, as I've mentioned before. Now, Ingo was already in Hisui before you arrived, so again, this is an assumption of mine. Maybe Arceus tried to stop that villain by using Ingo, but maybe Ingo was not strong enough, and now Arceus decided to throw you into all of this. Who knows? I don't know. That villain also resembles a character from Diamond and Pearl, but I will stop it there. So, while I said that Pokemon Blue and Crystal still were my favorite after the disaster that happened with Shield, actually, after having played Arceus, this might be my new favorite. It plays like a traditional JRPG in a Pokemon world. It's a prequel to almost everything, which makes the franchise actually interesting. It's overall charming and has a lot of personality. Can be challenging. It gives you the possibility to battle Pokemon by yourself. It added stealth elements, has a good amount of missions, building up the village similar to Digimon World, nice draw distances, etc. I was seriously surprised by how much I actually like this game, and while I haven't mentioned every single thing you can do here, I've certainly mentioned or showed most of it. While trading is still an option, online battles are completely gone because the developers wanted Arceus to be a full single-player experience. In fact, you don't even need to trade anything with anyone to complete the Pokédex. And since I don't play online at all, I don't really care if there are no online battles in this game, who cares? But if that pisses you off, yeah, then play something else. But if you don't give two shits about online gaming like me, then Pokemon Legends Arceus might be a good deal for you. Yeah, graphically it doesn't push the Switch in any way, but still, it's quite a nice game to look at. And similar to Blue and Crystal back then, Arceus actually made me want to continue playing, catching and evolving all Pokemon, completing the Pokédex, completing all post-game events, as well catching the new Pokemon that only happen post-game, etc. I had more fun playing this than I thought, and like I've mentioned, Pokemon Shield has absolutely nothing on Pokemon Legends Arceus.